Today, we're building a high-end AMD gaming beast without emptying your wallet. We're using top-tier parts like the 7900 XTX and the 7800 X3D for insane performance. And we're going to show you exactly how to do it, all while saving as much as possible. This build has all of the power without the crazy price. Plus, you won't believe the tips that we're going to have coming up for you. Let's get started. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started on this thing. It's going to be a voiceover on this one instead of a live while I'm doing it, so just, keep that in mind. I did want to ask, if you don't mind, give us a subscription to the YouTube channel here. That would be fantastic because we're trying to grow our channel. We're trying to grow up and be big boy YouTubers. So, as you see here, I'm just cutting the boxes open, getting the motherboard and processor all out. This is a multi-part series of this build. First thing I'm going to be doing is building the motherboard and actually installing it into the actual case. I like doing that first so that I can come back and manage my wires easier. I like running the front I/O so that I can have the wires nice and tucked away, and you'll see that in the next video. But I like having a fully built motherboard to just literally pop it in, throw a couple screws in there, well, all of the screws in there, and run from there with it. So because we are a open working shop, all of the owner's manuals and cables that we don't use we give to the customer just in case they ever need them. SATA cables, the owner's manual, Wi-Fi antennas. What we like to do is stick them in the motherboard bag. It's a nice little bag. So nice little bag for the customer to have. So as you can see here, basically all I'm doing is preparing the CPU socket for installation of the actual CPU. I like to take the little plastic cover off. I don't like adding any extra or not needed pressure to the processor when installing it. There's recently a article on Reddit and a couple other sites about a guy who installed his processor backwards or upside down, or somehow managed to blow the entire processor and motherboard to bits because of incorrect installation. So I don't show it in this video, but I have shown it before. Line up your little triangles on the socket and line up the triangle on the actual processor. Most processors nowadays are keyed in a way that they can only be installed one way. It's impossible to install them any other way correctly without blowing stuff up, literally. With DDR5 RAM, I like to actually pick the motherboard up and add some pressure behind the motherboard. DDR5 sockets are a little bit different than DDR4. The click is a little bit extra, clicky needed, so we just click that. Alright, sorry about that phone ringing there. I had to pause it for a minute to do that, but yeah, I gave a little extra click on the backside of the, not a little extra click, a little extra pressure on the backside of the motherboard. It just prevents any possible flexing on the motherboard. Very rare that anything would happen to it, but I don't like taking chances. M.2, because of what I like to do is I like to take the heatsink off of it and immediately remove the sticker so that I never forget the sticker's on there. If you don't remove that sticker, that heatsink becomes a heat trap and will potentially cause damage to your M.2. So just make sure that you're, keeping an eye on that, making sure that you don't have the sticker on your heat spreader, because, yeah, not a good idea. MSI has a nice locking mechanism on their motherboards. So does Asus and a couple other brands, but it just slides over. Simple, easy, wham bam, done. Make sure you got it in the right hole, line it up properly, and make sure if you don't have those that you actively use the correct size spacer for your M.2, because you don't want to flex that M.2 and bend it. We've been seeing a lot of that lately, unfortunately. Here I am just doing a couple screws on the heatsink, making sure that that's all snugged up. You don't have to go Hercules mode and crank it down, just enough pressure on there is good. So, yeah. Oh, and I remove the plastic covering ASMR style stuff that people love. Since I'm not putting an M.2 in the bottom 2 slots, I'm going to just leave the spreader with the sticker above the heatsink, just to prevent any kind of deformation or anything from the actual spreader. So yeah. Alright, so I moved the motherboard out of the way and ta-da, now there's a case here. I've already taken the front and back doors off this case just so I'd have access to it. I am going to take the front glass out of it as well. This is a Lee & Lee knockoff. This is one of the places that you can save a little bit of money and still get the same performance. Just not going to have a pretty badge on it. This is Lee & Lee. This is an A. Manson PC case. It is a dual chamber PC case. Knocking my monitor off of its little stand back there. But it's a dual chamber PC case. Holds up to 9 or 10 120mm fans on there. We personally just put 9 in the build because of the fact that you're saving money. You let your positive air pressure push air out of the back holes. It'll be just fine. It'll prevent more dust inside the PC. It will trap more dust on the dust covers. That's what they're there for. Let the positive air pressure do its job. So here I'm just grabbing the standoffs and all of the goodies for the standoffs for the motherboard. Screw those guys in there. Some of the cheaper cases you actually have to manually use the screwdriver bit. Some of the more expensive cases you can screw them in by hand. I have the screwdriver set. I just screw them in by, with the screwdriver set. Yeah, and that will give you your pretty standoffs, give you the correct motherboard height. Alright, so while this goes through, background noise is happening. While this goes through, I just wanted to mention if there's any type of build, any specific case, or anything that y'all want to get a build done in, definitely let us know down in the comments. We can do some pretty crazy builds here, and we always enjoy those kind of things. I am working on a Antec Flux Wood Edition, not the Pro Edition, with a bunch of really high pressure Antec fans. I'll be bringing that video out here in the next probably a week or so. You'll see a short about it as well. I'm going to really hit on fan airflow and pressure and the key importances of having good airflow and good pressure. So just stay tuned for that. I don't want to spread misinformation, and I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers that gives you 7,000 different videos about noise normalized testing and airflow numbers in a certain case and all of that. I want to give you ways to save money but getting similar or better performance than getting some of the super expensive fans, and at the same time make your life easier because you have less wires to hook up everywhere. So I wanted to mention this again. I mentioned this in most of our videos that we build in. The motherboard screws, make sure that you're using the correct motherboard screws. You should not have to over torque them super crazy. They should thread in really easily. If you can't grab the neck of your screwdriver and spin it with your fingers, you either got really weak fingers or you're just not using the right screws. So once you get 2 screws lined up and screwed in, it's all screwed in good. You don't need to put any extra pressure on the motherboard. You can see me there. I'm just simply screwing it in really lightly. Doesn't have to be super cranked down. Just as long as the screws don't ever come out. Don't turn into Asmongold's screw guy and have loose screws everywhere. I am having an issue with this one particular screw, and I end up finding out that I have the wrong screw. I find that later on in the build and actually fix that with the correct screw. So goofy me for grabbing the wrong screw. It was too small of a screw. But as you can see, I'm just threading all the screws in here. Get them all screwed up. Screwed down. Whatever you want to call it. Don't worry guys, I know that this is a pretty boring process. I probably if y'all want me to, next time I can speed this process up, but I do want to just have full open, transparency of what goes into a build, how fast it can be done, and where to not skip steps at. Part 2 of this series is going to be some of the wire management, some of the fan installation, why we chose certain things, and some of the places that you can save some money. But if you have any questions or things about that, just feel free to ask, man. We will give you great advice on whatever case that you want to build in or whatever crazy stuff you want to see. We're all for it, man. Again, we wanted to mention, if you are enjoying this content, please give us a subscription. Please give us a like. Anything that y'all can do to help us out would be fantastic. And yeah, we'll see you here in part 2 here in the next video. I'll link it up here in one of the corners.